In the summer of 2024, historian Dr. Sarah Mitchell made one of the most disturbing discoveries in American photographic history. While sorting through items at an estate sale in Salem, Massachusetts, she found an old photograph that would challenge everything experts believed about early 20th century child photography. At first glance, the image looked ordinary. A young girl about 8 years old stood in front of an ornate wooden fence in 1903. She wore a clean white dress with delicate lace trim, and her dark hair was pulled back with a silk ribbon. What caught Dr. Mitchell's attention was the girl's bright, genuine smile that seemed full of pure childhood joy. The photograph carried the embossed mark of J. Morrison Photography Studio, Salem, Mass. Along the bottom corner. For 1903, the picture quality was unusually sharp. Every detail stood out clearly, from the fine patterns on the child's dress to the weathered texture of the wooden fence behind her. The estate sale coordinator, Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell, explained that the photograph came from the old Blackwood family collection. The Blackwoods had been prominent mill owners in Salem for generations. This particular image was discovered in a locked chest in the mansion's basement, together with dozens of other family photographs spanning several decades. According to the estate records, the photograph had remained untouched for more than a century. The family had no immediate heirs, and most of their personal papers had been lost or destroyed over the years, leaving the identities of the people in the pictures largely unknown. Dr. Mitchell specialized in early American childhood history and had examined thousands of similar images during her career. Yet something about this photograph made her buy it at once. The technical quality seemed almost too advanced for its time, and there was an indefinable quality in the child's expression that she could not quite explain. What she did not realize then was that she had just acquired a piece of evidence that would uncover one of Salem's most closely guarded secrets, a secret that had stayed hidden in plain sight for over 120 years. Back in her laboratory at Boston University, Dr. Mitchell began her standard examination using modern digital scanning equipment. The photograph measured 8 by 10 inches and was in remarkably good condition despite its age. There was no fading, no chemical staining, and no physical damage. When she placed it under the high-resolution scanner, she noticed several unusual features. The depth of field was exceptionally sharp for period photography, and the lighting looked carefully controlled, suggesting the use of advanced studio equipment that would have been expensive and rare in 1903 Salem. The digital scan revealed extraordinary detail. Every fold in the dress, every strand of hair, and every grain in the wooden fence appeared with startling clarity. It was only when she began to magnify specific areas that she saw something that made her breath catch. At 200%, the smile still looked perfect. At 400%, subtle inconsistencies appeared around the edges of the mouth. At 800% magnification, the child's eyes, which had seemed bright and joyful in the original image, revealed something completely different. Instead of the natural spark of childhood innocence, there was an unmistakable emptiness, a hollow quality that seemed to look through the camera rather than at it. Dr. Mitchell leaned back, removed her glasses, and rubbed her tired eyes. In 15 years of examining historical photographs, she had never seen anything quite like this. The technical impossibility of achieving such detail in 1903, combined with the disturbing quality of the magnified expression, suggested something far more complex than a simple family portrait. She immediately began checking her database of known photographers from the Salem area. J. Morrison Photography Studio appeared in city records from 1901 to 1905. But curiously, no other examples of Morrison's work existed in any museum collections or historical archives. It was as if this single photograph was the only surviving evidence of the studio's existence. The inconsistencies were mounting, and Dr. Mitchell realized she needed to dig deeper into Salem's history. Her first step was to contact the Salem Historical Society. Archivist Margaret Thompson confirmed that the Blackwoods had been a powerful family who owned 3 textile mills and employed nearly a quarter of Salem's workforce at their peak. Edmund Blackwood, the patriarch in 1903, had expanded the business considerably. Yet the family records became strangely sparse around 1902 and 1903. Most wealthy families of that period kept careful notes of births, deaths, and social events, but the Blackwood papers thinned out exactly during those years. There were references to Edmund's support for progressive medical research, and child welfare studies, though the specific nature of these activities was never detailed. More interesting were the payment records showing large sums paid to J. Morrison Photographic Services between 1902 and 1904, amounts far higher than normal portrait work would cost. A 1903 city directory listed the studio at 47 Chestnut Street. When Dr. Mitchell visited the address, she found only a narrow alley between two commercial buildings. City records showed that building permits and business licenses had been properly filed, yet there were no tax records, no newspaper advertisements, and no mentions in social columns, unusual for a business serving Salem's elite families. As she dug deeper into municipal records, she discovered something that made her increasingly uncomfortable. During 1903, Salem had experienced an unusually high number of childhood accidents and sudden illnesses among the children of wealthy families. The death certificates, when she could locate them, were almost all signed by the same physician, Dr. Cornelius Whitmore, and used remarkably similar language to describe the causes of death. Whitmore's name appeared repeatedly in Salem's medical records from 1902 to 1904, but his background proved difficult to trace. He had arrived in late 1901, claiming credentials from European medical schools that could not be verified in any accessible archives. Within months, he had established a private practice serving exclusively the children of the city's industrial elite, including the Blackwoods. His specialty was listed as pediatric nervous disorders and developmental abnormalities. Medical journals of the period show that the early 1900s were a time of experimental approaches to childhood psychology. Treatments later recognized as harmful were then considered advanced science. Whitmore had published papers in obscure journals advocating photographic documentation as a diagnostic tool for what he called constitutional melancholia in children. Dr. Mitchell found copies of those papers at Harvard's medical library. They described elaborate photographic sessions meant to capture the essential nature of childhood disturbance and to record the progress of treatment. The papers frequently mentioned collaboration with skilled photographic technicians capable of producing images of unprecedented clarity. The connection to J. Morrison became clearer when she discovered private correspondence between Whitmore and Edmund Blackwood, preserved in a legal file from the Blackwood estate. In a letter dated March 15, 1903, Whitmore wrote that the photographic documentation continued to yield remarkable insights, and that Morrison's technical innovations allowed them to capture details previously invisible to the naked eye. Blackwood's reply a week later confirmed that the financial arrangements with Morrison would continue as long as the documentation met the required standards, and that discretion remained paramount. These letters suggested a relationship that went far beyond ordinary medical treatment or family portrait photography. Even more disturbing were the medical supply orders placed by Whitmore during 1903. Records showed purchases of large quantities of sedatives, restraints, and photographic chemicals, an unusual combination for a pediatric practice, all paid for by the Blackwood Family Trust. Armed with this information, Dr. Mitchell returned to the photograph. Under extreme magnification, the child's hollow eyes took on a more sinister meaning. She consulted colleagues in medical history. Dr. James Crawford, a specialist in 19th-century medical practices, examined enlarged sections and said the expression matched the vacant stare associated with prolonged exposure to chloral hydrate or similar sedatives. The child appeared conscious, but completely dissociated from her surroundings. Checking Whitmore's supply orders again, she confirmed large purchases of chloral hydrate and other substances now known to have severe effects on developing minds. When she cross-referenced the dates of those orders with Salem's death records, a clear pattern emerged. Mortality rates among children under Whitmore's care rose sharply whenever his chemical purchases peaked. The death certificates, all signed by Whitmore himself, listed causes such as sudden cardiac failure or respiratory complications from nervous exhaustion. Yet the similar language and timing suggested an effort to obscure the true circumstances. Further investigation revealed that the Blackwoods were not Whitmore's only patrons. At least 6 other prominent Salem families, the Wessons, Pickerings, Havens, Storrows, Adams, and Phillipses, had made similar financial arrangements with both Whitmore and J. Morrison. During the same period, each family had lost at least one child between 1902 and 1904. Each child had been under Whitmore's care for developmental concerns or nervous dispositions, and each family had paid substantial sums to Morrison for specialized photographic services in the months before the child's death. The technical quality of the photograph remained a puzzle. Experts confirmed that the process, tonal range, depth of field, and film grain structure matched equipment and techniques that were not available until the 1,920 seconds. Either the photo had been taken much later and artificially aged, or someone had access to technology 20 to 30 years ahead of its time. Patent records showed that between 1901 and 1903, someone using the name J. Morrison had filed applications for improved photographic apparatus and optical lens systems. These applications were sponsored and funded by a consortium of Salem businessmen that included Edmund Blackwood and several other families whose children later died. Customs records from Boston Harbor revealed importation of specialized optical equipment from Germany during the same years, consigned to Morrison Technical Services in Salem. Using genealogical and cemetery records, Dr. Mitchell began tracing the individual children. The first strong match was 8-year-old Millicent Haven, who died on April 12, 1903, just weeks after the date written on the back of the photograph. Family letters described Millicent as a bright, energetic child until early 1903, when she began treatment with Whitmore for episodes of melancholic disposition. A private letter written by her mother 3 months after the death revealed growing suspicions. In her final weeks, Millicent had become increasingly distant and vacant, as if present in body but absent in spirit. The treatments seemed to drain all joy from her. Whitmore had insisted on extensive photographic sessions. Morrison would arrive with unusual equipment and spend hours photographing the child in various poses. Millicent smiled for the camera as instructed, but her eyes had become empty. Similar stories appeared with the other families. Thomas Pickering, age 7, died in May 1903 after months of treatment that left him lethargic and disconnected. Caroline Wesson, age 9, died in June 1903 after changing from a spirited child into one who moved and spoke as if in a constant dream state. Each child's story followed the same arc: normal development until Whitmore's care, gradual loss of vitality, extensive photography by Morrison, and eventual death attributed to constitutional weakness. Private papers from the Salem Progressive Medicine Society, founded in 1901 by Edmund Blackwood and other leading citizens, finally revealed the full picture. The Society's stated purpose was to advance understanding of childhood development. Its private correspondence showed a darker agenda. Members believed traditional child rearing among the wealthy produced children too soft for modern industrial society. Whitmore convinced them that carefully controlled psychological stress combined with pharmaceutical interventions could strengthen the children's constitutional fiber. Photographic documentation was necessary to track the progress. A letter from Whitmore in February 1903 spoke of observing the gradual emergence of proper strength, even when outward appearances suggested decline, and noted that subjects who failed to adapt were regrettably eliminated by the process itself, serving the goal of preserving only the strongest genetic lines among Salem's leadership families. What they had created was essentially a eugenics program, using their own children as experimental subjects under the guise of progressive medicine. The advanced photographic technology allowed them to document subtle psychological changes invisible to the naked eye. The conspiracy operated with impunity because it involved the city's most powerful families, and the victims were their own children. No outside authorities questioned the high mortality rates when a respected physician certified the deaths as natural. The program ended abruptly in late 1904, when medical authorities in Boston and New York began asking questions about the unusual death rates. Rather than risk exposure, the Society terminated the project. Whitmore was quietly relocated to California with a substantial payment and a new identity. Morrison disappeared completely. The advanced equipment was dismantled and disposed of. Almost all documentation was gathered and destroyed. Death certificates were altered, supply records erased, and even the city records for the photography studio were modified. The families maintained silence through shared guilt and the knowledge that exposing the truth would implicate them all. By 2024, the original participants were long dead. Most descendants had only vague awareness of something unspeakable in the family's past. The single photograph survived by accident, locked away in a basement chest because it was too potentially incriminating to destroy yet too dangerous to allow into public view. In the end, Dr. Mitchell understood that the smiling child, almost certainly Millicent Haven, represented far more than a family portrait. It was evidence of a systematic program of child abuse and experimental harm conducted by Salem's elite against their own children, documented with technology decades ahead of its time, and hidden so thoroughly that it remained secret for more than 120 years. The hollow eyes visible only under extreme magnification showed the true cost: a child chemically and psychologically manipulated into complete dissociation, smiling on command while her natural vitality was destroyed.